The following program is a production of Pioneer Public Television.
Hello and welcome to Compass, a production of Pioneer Public Television. I'm Les Heen, your host for Compass. This is a weekly discussion of public policy and important issues facing our viewing area. This week, we'll talk about how veterans' services are changing to improve the health care that's available to veterans in our region. We'll have representatives from the St. Cloud Veterans Administration and the Swift County Veteran Services Office. We'll touch on what programs are doing to reach rural veterans and how the healing process works. First, Pioneer's Laura K. Prosser takes us to Sauk Center, where out of an old dormitory building, a Veterans Healing Center has started, and how it's making a difference. Here's Laura's report.
Veterans don't always get the benefits or the help they deserve once they return home from serving their country. However, at the Eagles Healing Nest in Sauk Center, Minnesota, they are starting to get, well, the healing they so desperately need and deserve. Melanie Butler, the founder, and Todd Westerbeck, assistant director, are here to tell us about what veterans can expect from the nest and how the healing starts. Melanie, Todd, welcome.
Welcome to our nest.
Thank you.
Why don't you tell me a little bit about what is the Eagles Healing Nest?
Our nest is a place that veterans are creating their own place to heal with honor. We don't do things in the clinical model or the inside the box. It wasn't created that way, and that's the commitment that we made to them, that it wouldn't be that way. So they hold each other accountable as well. They want it to be safe. They want to have hope and purpose. But that camaraderie is huge, and we have, Todd and I have, as well as other veterans here and our volunteers, we've done interventions, we've helped law enforcement, we've helped hospitals. We just want to do the best that we can, and it takes a whole lot of people joining hearts and hands. We are the solution to what our veterans are going through. They all come here with a whole host of issues, from depression, anxiety, from decades of homelessness, to addiction not by choice, but by the prescription meds that they've been given for decades. And so in 2012, the nest was started.
What brought the creation of this about?
The need came about because when my son came back from Iraq, he was struggling and suicidal. And the entities that were supposed to help him said no. With 22 veterans committing suicide every day. That's the government statistics, and Minnesota leading the way, leading the top of that list, is tragic. In that one veteran that commits suicide, it has a ripple effect from their children, their parents. So it took me back to a promise that I made to my stepfather, who is a Vietnam vet, that I would take care of veterans. I didn't know where that would lead at 8 years old, but here we are. And the one common denominator is that if you gave them a place to heal, that they would do that.
What do you tell the people that are a little bit skeptic about creating a home for them to heal here?
The way that I look at it is there's a lot of different types of healing. I mean, you can heal from a broken arm, you can heal from a lot of different things in different settings. We look at it, I think, of more of a holistic approach where we're healing the person's soul. Yes, you can heal at home, but we have a fairly large percentage of residents here that are married and in relationships. And whether it's due to mental health issues, chemical dependency, or whatever, they're not welcome there, or they know that it's not a good place for them. And so we encourage them to work on that, work on themselves, but also work on those relationships. We also encourage them to bring their families here. We're not a locked facility. They can leave. They can go and spend time with their families, and we actually encourage that. And that's all part of that overall healing.
The Nest provides the home, and we network different providers that come in and provide services for our veterans to heal. Everything from the clinical model to the peer-to-peer to AA to NA to spiritual help, whatever they need. And if we don't have it, we find it.
I came to the Eagles Healing Nest October 1st, 2013. I needed help figuring out how to reintegrate into the civilian world again after 8 years service. I figured I'd give it a shot because if I had gone back to where I'd come from, I was going to more or less be worse off, and the final outcome of where I'd come from was either death or jail. Nobody in the civilian world understood how I operated mentally or just in general. And here, you're not an outsider. Like, people get it. They get your humor. They get, everything about it, because we've all walked that walk. Different stories, different branches, some combat, some not. But the brotherhood is what I was missing most when I was in the civilian world. There are times where you just kind of want to shut everything down and just hide, if you will, from the outside world. Melanie won't let you do that. A lot of us know each other's patterns because we've seen it in ourselves. So when we see others struggling, we're there for them. And the same has gone for me with other veterans in the past. They've seen me struggle, so they reach out. The fact that you can sit down here when you're having an issue and talk to other veterans that have been in the same areas of Iraq and Afghanistan that you have, that know the battles you're going through, or the Vietnam vets that have, they'll take you under their wing and like, hey, you're normal. Like, what you think you're going through in your head that makes you feel like you're losing your mind isn't so. With the services, the time, and the safety of the nest, I've been able to work on and identify 90% of all of the after effects I was dealing with. I'm alive, mostly besides my own actions, but a lot of it due to what the Eagles Nest has done for me. I've gotten the relationship with my family has been restored, which I had destroyed through years of drinking and not being able to understand how to deal with everything I was struggling with. If you're ready to face everything that you've had issues with, this is the place for you. The nest doesn't do it for you. The nest gives you the surroundings, the safety, and the support you're going to need through all the services that the nest provides to make those hard-fought battles in your head more bearable. It's not an easy route, but it's worth every second of the fight. Like, nobody ever told me that dealing with the war was harder after you got out than it was actually fighting it. Because the firefights ended once they were over. The ones that stick in your head don't ever go away.
The Eagles Healing Nest in Sauk Centre is an independent organization and is in no way affiliated with the Veterans Administration. With that being said, here to talk to us about other areas of veterans care from the Veterans Administration, we have a staff member there, Deb Lucas. Deb is the Associate Director of the St. Cloud VA. And from the Swift County Veterans Service Office in western Minnesota, we have Dave Barrett. So, Dave, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nationally there's been a lot of discussion about the healing process for veterans and the psychological trauma, the physical trauma, especially with veterans who have been discharged from multiple tours of duty in the last several years. So, Deb, when folks come to you at the VA, tell us how the healing process really starts.
Well, it depends on what theoretical background you come from, but most people, when they begin the healing process, are in avoidance. They are in denial that there's an issue. They come back from being away and they're going through life and it just doesn't seem right. So that avoidance is the first step to realize I got a problem. They have to confront it, and that is the second step of the grief or the process. Is they have to confront what's going on. So, as you move through that, though, you can come to clarity, and then you can come at the end to gratefulness and a happiness that you can have for the rest of your life. So, it's a process.
Yeah, it is a process, and of course there are individuals who I'm sure come to the VA directly.
Yes.
And then, Dave Barrett, there are folks who go to a Veterans Service office or a family member who comes to you and says, there's a problem, where do we start? That's sort of where you come in?
Absolutely. Actually, the units of the veterans returning recently have really been pushing their soldiers to come in right away, and we've seen a lot of them coming in within days of returning back to the States, back to home. And so then we can start a dialogue with them there to see what the next steps are for them, if they need to get into the VA and start moving along with their care there.
It's interesting you said that the service, that more people are coming in right away. So what kind of a difference then do you notice from the people who come in right away, as is suggested, to the people who don't come in? Does it really change what you have to do working with veterans that way?
It does. Really what it is they know the awareness. So we can sit down and have a conversation and let them know what's available, let them know what's out there, just so they have that in the back of their mind. We don't need to take immediate action. It's just to start the conversation. Really what they really want to do is get back to their everyday life, to the things that they do every day. That's first on their agenda. But like Deb said, eventually, for some of those soldiers returning, it's going to catch up with them.
Yeah, they may think they're okay and later on find out they're not. So Deb, Dave mentioned services available.
Yes.
And I know before we started this conversation, as we were warming up here, you'd mentioned that there are some new things available at the St. Cloud VA.
We have military sexual trauma group that deals with some of the things that weren't discussed before in the military, like sexual trauma. We have women's programs now that, are fairly new for women returning. So, we could even see people with, woman-type problems, pregnancies, whatever. We have the recovery model, which was mandated, as you know, from the 2003 Commission on Mental Health. And it is done in conjunction with one-to-one therapy and group therapy. So we have probably, if I had to count off the top of my head, 5 or 6 different therapies that we offer in addition to the one-to-one.
And then another thing that I think is relatively new is the hours of access or the call-in for 24-hour sort of help.
What we have now is 24/7 access to a live person who can help you with the mental health crisis or questions or medication advice or any of those things 24/7.
Yeah. And so Dave, I suppose then for your job, part of it is helping those veterans realize that if they have a problem, that it's not necessarily, their problem is not necessarily going to be between 8 and 4:30, right, but then letting them know that the work that you do or the work that the VA does, is there whenever they need it, right?
Absolutely, yes. And we're there to facilitate the contact and help problem solve if we need to. If they're having a specific area of the VA that they want to speak with or make appointments with, we can kind of wrestle those phone lines and make the contacts that we needed to make the connection with the VA.
How does your job differ from your colleagues who are in urban areas?
Well, of course, in our urban areas, the services are closer. Distance is huge for us. There are more services available because of the higher populations. Well, St. Cloud is a good example of that. So we have some challenges there. But on the upside of that, in a rural community, I think we have a better pulse on our veterans that are living within the community as well.
So for you, it's a matter of, I'm more likely to know these people as individuals because I may see them at the hardware store or the grocery store or something else. Is that it?
Absolutely. I don't get out of the hardware store without talking with a few veterans for sure.
Well, and also because I expect that for a lot of these people who are veterans in your area in particular, they serve together.
Yes.
They serve together, so they were in the unit, so you have some of that same unit camaraderie. And do you see that as well in affecting who comes in? Helping each other?
Yes, absolutely. They have those connections together, and many times those relationships and friendships after the military carry on, especially if they've stayed in the area.
Yeah. Now, Deb, I know the story that Laura was doing there about Eagle's Nest not very far from where you are,
Right.
in St. Cloud. So that's just one example of other ways that veterans are finding to heal themselves.
Right.
You know, is that the sort of thing we can expect to see more of, do you think?
Oh, absolutely. We are strengthening our ties with community agencies so that, you know, if for some reason we can't get a veteran exactly what he wants, say it's acupuncture or something like that, we can at least now get him to where he wants to go. So the Choice Act, of course, has allowed veterans who live out more rurally to get the sort of treatments that they want. We now have an electronic medical record as well, which has been phenomenal for those of us in the clinical field, because your information, although is secure, can go to your provider at Mayo or your provider in Florida if you're a snowbird. So, you know, there's a lot of new things that we can do, and all you have to do is call and make contact, and we'll take care of everything.
You referred to the Choice Act, and so
Yes.
for our viewers who aren't familiar with that, the Choice Act is giving veterans more options.
Exactly. And what it does is for veterans who live 30 miles or greater from a VA hospital or clinic, we manage to get them services that they want, that they need right in their own area. So that is a quicker way. We don't have to have them driving. We can get them that service there, or closer at least than that 30 miles. Also, if they have to wait 30 days, that's too much for us. So we try and get them an appointment, you know, in the community, closer than that. So we're making all of the inroads into same-day access. And these are just some of the ones that we utilize.
Well, and of course, the Choice Act is relatively new, and so I expect in your work, Dave, part of what you have to work with is you may deal across or work with veterans who are not even aware of that or aware that it's changed.
That's right, yes. Letting them know that it's out there. VA is very good at making contact with the veterans, usually through mail. But then again, we have to go ahead and translate what's going on with that, help them get enrolled, and help them start utilizing those programs, Choice Act.
Yeah, and so have you had a lot of veterans come into you and say, I've heard of the Choice Act, what does it mean for me, or do they have some awareness?
Yes, absolutely, yes. They're aware that it's out there. Some of them may not be aware of the specifics and how they can use it, and some of the rules and the framework that goes behind it. Sure. And that's why we're there. We're there to guide them through that.
Yeah. Well, you know, is part of also the barriers for people who go to the VA or who go to you, is there skepticism about what may be available? Is it just the innate independence of a lot of people that they're reluctant to go in? Is that a huge barrier for you, Dave, as you see people?
Yeah, it can be. We see the VA has changed a lot just in the time that I've been a VSO, and it's changed over the decades and over the years. I believe it's changed for the better. I feel that our VA in our area here is top notch. I really do believe that. We communicate well together. I was just up on Monday for a quarterly meeting, and that's how we can air our grievances and some of our problems that we're having. And we get follow back, we get feedback on that, and those issues become resolved, and then we move forward. So some of that skepticism, I think, can be unfounded if it happened many years ago. The VA is doing a very good job, but like any large entity like that, of course, sometimes folks can get lost in that. So.
Sure, and I'm sure there are organizational barriers and then individual barriers too, where individuals may say, no, I don't think I need their help, or I don't think they can help me, or I can just handle it myself. So I think that gets back to your first point, Deb, about the denial.
Yeah, denial, absolutely. And maybe you know or don't know this, and Dave, maybe you know it better than I do. Some of those guys that are gals that come back recently in the last couple of years, and we do touch base with them before they're out, but I hear that some of them are afraid because they remain in the National Guard. And the stigma that's involved around mental health and mental health treatment, they don't want anybody to know. So we have guys out there who are suffering, and maybe because they're a guardsman and they know they're going to have this issue if they go to the VA. It's not an issue, but it's hard to convince people of that.
Right.
Yeah.
They've invested a lot of time in the Guard. You know, apparently they've been more than likely deployed. And if they're still in the Guard, Reserve, or any side branch like that, yeah, there is a stigma. They may not want to seek the treatment because they're still a DoD, Department of Defense employee.
Yeah. Deb and Dave, as we close out this conversation, of course, we all know people who have been veterans and have struggled, or there may be a family member who has struggled. So I'd like to close out this discussion with some advice that either one of you may have. And Deb, I'd like to start with you about veterans or family members.
Right.
Where do they start? Where should they go for more information?
Okay. The biggest thing is getting them on the phone. We can do everything by phone, and we have a direct number to eligibility so that they can get all their questions answered. And it's 320-255-6340.
Let's give that again.
320-255-6340. 40, I'm sorry, 40, yeah.
Okay.
And that'll get you right to an eligibility person who can determine what you're eligible for, even set up appointments right from there.
And that's the number in the St. Cloud area, so
Yes.
your office. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Dave?
I would say get in contact with your county Veterans Service Office. Every county in Minnesota has a Veterans Service Office, and you do not need to go to the one that's in your county. Geographically or for whatever reason, you can go to any county and seek services through them. And of course, we can help facilitate VA or as well as many more benefits that are out there. And a list of those county service office contacts are on macvso.org.
MACVSO?
Yes, correct.
Which stands for Minnesota Association of County Veteran Service Officers.
Correct.
Okay.
Very good.
I don't get all the acronyms that go by fast, but I think I got that one. So, and again, your number, 320-255-6340 for the VA. And the website one more time again?
macvso.org.
Okay, good. Well, let's hope the best for all the veterans in our communities and that we have veterans who get the help they need. So, Deb Lucas from the St. Cloud VA and Dave Barrett from Swift County Veteran Service Officers, thanks for joining us on Compass.
Thank you for having us.
That's it for this week on the topic of the healing of veterans in rural areas. Our Compass producer, Laura K. Prosser, will take it from here and end this week's episode with the next installment of the Compass Literature Corner. Thanks for watching.
As part of the new segment to the show called the Compass Literature Corner, we will be talking to local authors and writers who have had an impact on this region or whom this region has had an impact on. Today we have a man who is not only a veteran, but a poet who writes for civilians and veterans alike. His book of poems is a flip book split between designated audiences of warriors and the other half. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm proud to say that today's guest is Ogilvie resident Jack Stevens. Jack, welcome.
Thank you very much. It's very nice.
So Jack, why don't you tell me a little bit about what inspired you to write your book? I will say it for you, Poetry for Warriors and The Other Half.
And what's happened in my life is what inspires each one of the poems I've written. Some are very happy. I like to think that I have a good sense of humor, so I put some of the funny stuff in. But there's a lot of tragedy in my life, and it seems like most of my life has been full of significant events that most people don't deal with, like war. It kind of explains everything, what I've been through.
Now, these poems that in this book are deeply personal, but also relatable. So tell me a little bit about what you got out of writing it. Did it offer some type of catharsis?
It validates who I am and how I got here. These poems, they're not for sissies. They're especially the ones about the war and combat and how people treated us when we came home, how the difference between Vietnam veterans coming home and today's warrior coming home. There's a lot going on there. And You can sugarcoat it all if you want, but it's still very honest and very true. It's interesting to people that weren't alive then to see this.
So in your work at the Eagles Healing Nest in Sauk Centre, which was discussed earlier on in this episode, what kind of response have you gotten from the veterans there based on them reading your work?
I have many veterans, older veterans, come and read my poetry, and they say, Jack, you're saying for us exactly what we want to say and can't say. We went off to a war that we didn't particularly want to go to. We didn't understand. Many of us didn't know where Vietnam was. Yeah, it was a tumultuous time in our life and in our society. And today I can tell people, again, it's not whining and I'm not angry. I'm just saying, folks, we were no different than these kids that are coming home to the brass bands and all the flag waving and stuff, which is fantastic. When we came home, they were throwing things at us and spitting on us. And we didn't come home as a group. We came home, most of us came home as individuals or in smaller groups. So we had to face everybody by ourselves.
So I want to focus on the veteran poems for a minute and ask how you decided on what topics and themes to talk about. I mean, not only do you talk about being no different, but you also talk about PTSD, correct?
Correct. Again, I'm going back and thinking through the things that I went through. I also listen to the young men that talk to me, and they tell me about the things that they have had to endure and what bothers them today. And I relate to that. They trust me, and I have validation, and I have credibility. And so those are the subjects that they need to talk about, and those are the ones I wrote about.
Do you think that's why, because you listen, that your poetry has such deep resonance with veterans?
Oh, I hope so. I hope that makes a difference. I hope that they see that. And that's what I'm told anyway, and I believe it.
As we round out this discussion, why don't you treat us with a reading of one of your poems?
All right. It's called We Were No Different Than the Boys of Today, and it's dedicated to all Vietnam veterans, POWs, and MIAs. I beg you to listen to what I must say. We were no different than the boys of today. Our country summoned and we answered the call. We joined the fight and we all stood tall. We fought in the jungles, paddies, and rivers. Whatever was needed, we were there to deliver. We fought for the hills and the rain and the red clay and gave them all back the very next day. We pray God's forgiveness for what we have done, for the lives that we took in the sights of our gun. We pray for our brothers whom our enemies killed, and pray at last their souls will be still. And to all of our brothers who never came home, you are never forgotten, you are never alone. I beg you to listen to what I must say. We were no different than the boys of today.
So if you want a copy of Jack Stevens' poetry book, talk to the Eagles Healing Nest in Sauk Centre, Minnesota. They have a Facebook page as well as a website. That's it for us in the Compass Literature Corner. Please tune in next week for more people, places, and issues facing our viewing area. I'm Pioneer's Laura K. Prosser, and may your compass always point you in the direction of a good book.
Major support for Compass is provided by the ongoing support of the Leo P. Flynn Estate of Millbank, South Dakota. Additional support is provided by the Southwest Minnesota Private Industry Council, promoting Southwest Minnesota as a place rich with opportunity. Come for the jobs, stay for the lifestyle. More information at swmnpic.org.